Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Planning and Zoning public hearing for Tuesday, July 27, 2021. Everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, I'll turn to our secretary to read the public notice.
Thank you. To be published in the Journal Enquirer, Thursday, July 15th, 2021, and Thursday, July 22nd, 2021, South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Tuesday, July 27th, 2021, at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall to consider the following. 1. Application 21-30P, Hartford Truck Equipment, LLC temporary and conditional permit. Request for a 2-year temporary and conditional permit for a truck storage area to accommodate 100 trucks, approximately 1 acre in size, on property located at 542 King Street, GC and RR zones. Number 2, application 21-31P, 1060 Main, LLC and Housing Authority, Town of South Windsor. Request for a special exception to Table 3.1.1A, Section 7.7, and site plan of development for the redevelopment of the existing 31,490 square foot facility into 37 elderly apartment units to be known as 1060 Main Street Elderly Housing on property located at 1060 Main Street, A-40 zone. To view this meeting, please tune into channel 61 if your provider is Cox Cable, or go to gmedia.swagit.com/live. Copies of the application are on file in the office of the town clerk and the planning department and online at www.southwindsor-ct.governor/planning department/pages/planning and zoning commission-applications. At this hearing, interested parties may be heard by calling into the meeting, and written comments by the public will be received by mail or email to planningzoningcomments@southwindsor-ct.gov. Persons who may require an accommodation can contact staff Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at 860-644-2511, extension 329. Bart Pasicone is chairman, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you very much. Our order of business tonight will be first to hear from the applicants, then we will hear from town staff, then we will hear from members of the public, first those in favor, and then we'll hear from members who are against or have concerns that they'd like to voice. And then we will hear from commissioners. We are light one commissioner, Commissioner Flagg, cannot be with us tonight, so Commissioner Powell will sit for Commissioner Flagg. Okay, if anyone has a cell phone, like myself, if you could please put it on vibrate so it doesn't interrupt the meeting, we would appreciate it. And at this time, I will call our first applicant, application 21-30P, Hartford Truck Equipment. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Is your microphone on? Push the little button. I'm not. Bingo.
Okay.
And if you could, make sure you speak into the mic. Ideally, you should have like 2 to 3 inches away from your mouth. Almost COVID.
How's that? Is that all right?
That's wonderful.
Very good. For the record, my name is Peter Alter. I'm a lawyer, practice law in Glastonbury in the firm of Alter and Pearson, and appear here tonight on behalf of Hartford Truck Equipment. Present for the company are Blake and Derek Brannon, who are the principals of Hartford Truck Equipment. Also with us tonight, who may offer some information, is Peter DeMalley of Design Professionals. The application for which the hearing is scheduled tonight is a proceeding in accordance with Section 2.13 of your zoning regulations, whereby we're seeking approval for the temporary storage of vehicles awaiting work by Hartford Trucking Equipment. The proposed storage lot is located fully in the commercial zone. The property owned by the owner, which is a related company to Hartford Truck Equipment, is a total of 11.5 acres. A portion of it is in the RR zone. The balance is in the general commercial zone. The activity we propose, which is a vehicle storage lot, is fully located in the general commercial zone. We propose no activity in the RR portion of the property. We applied for this temporary and conditional permit on May 21st, 2021. On June 28th, 2021, the town staff issued a notice of violation in that vehicles had already been parked in the area for which the proposal is presented tonight. We acknowledge that there are vehicles parked there in advance of this approval, and I'll offer an explanation as to how that occurred for the Commission's benefit. The Hartford Truck Equipment Company is about 25 years old. It was started by Blake and Derek's dad, and they've succeeded to the ownership of this company. It is a company that upfits trucks after they have been acquired by an end user to meet special needs for that user. For example, the installation of dump bodies, service and utility bodies, platform bodies, snow plows, spreaders, emergency lighting, truck-mounted cranes, and the like are the kinds of instrumentalities that are installed on vehicles at Hartford Truck Equipment. And they have been, Blake and Derek have been very successful in continuing to build the business. They have about 36 employees at the present time and have continued to grow their business through a reputation for providing excellent service and excellent equipment for the needs of people who have specialty trucking equipment in their businesses. The problem has arisen for Hartford Truck Equipment as a result of the supply chain breakdown that has occurred not only in this part of the automotive industry but across the automotive industry. While trucks continue to arrive at site for outfitting or upfitting as it's called, Hartford Truck Equipment simply couldn't get the equipment through the supply chain as they customarily would, so that where as simple an operation as fitting a truck with a trailer hitch would typically take a couple of days once the truck arrived there, delivery time for that kind of equipment is now 3 or 4 weeks out. And so the trucks sit waiting for the equipment to arrive. Trucks have continued to arrive at the site because of agreements that have been made, contracts that have been entered into, but the supply chain of equipment has simply not resolved itself, which has led to a surplus of trucks on the site waiting for servicing and the equipment to be added to them for the customers. They've been sitting waiting. Typically, Hartford Truck Equipment gets a vehicle in and within a week has that vehicle back off-site and in the hands of the user. That time frame has continued to grow as equipment has been more and more difficult to secure. Blake and Derek, above all else, want to be good neighbors. They recognize that there's residential uses on the King Street side of their property. They own property that has frontage on King Street, but all of the activity that they have is within the general commercial zone. The map that you see now displayed shows the zone line. Everything on this map to the top towards King Street, above the broken line is in the RR zone. Everything below that is in the general commercial zone.
Excuse me, sir, there are actually 3 panels between me and that, and I'm finding it very hard to, I'm very, very hard to see what you're talking about.
Do we have the portable mic for him? Jeff?
That's all right. We have, here we go. Thank you.
Well, but I'm looking for you to move it where where all of us can see it, okay?
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be viewable by the public also. That's why they put them up on the side. I understand with the plexiglass.
Once I go through it, we'll put it back so everybody can see it. This is the zone line, dotted broken line that runs directly across the property. Everything towards King Street is the rural residence zone. Everything towards John Finch Boulevard is general commercial zone.
Is that microphone on? Can you tap it? Peter, you just have to turn your other microphone back on, please. Thank you.
This is really complicated. It was easier than when we were virtual, though. This is much better. Derek and Blake are very much aware of their neighbors in the King Street area, and they have initiated and organized and attended 2 neighborhood meetings before tonight. First, to explore with the neighbors their concerns about Hartford Truck Equipment's operation and future, and then to develop a plan, a long-term plan going forward that will protect the neighborhood but allow the company to continue to flourish. We are working on a long-range plan that we expect to present to this commission as part of an overall development for the site. But we're not ready to do that tonight and bring that plan forward. We need more time with the neighbors to make sure that we can address their concerns to as great an extent as possible, and also enough time to work on the work and operation that the company needs in terms of being able to continue to grow their business. But we will be bringing that forward. I just learned this evening, so it's not part of the materials that you have, that Blake and Derek have continued to discuss matters with their neighbors. And while there is already a 6-foot fence around the storage area that you see on the plan in light green, that has screening attached to it, in addition to that, at the request of the neighbors, what Blake and Derek have agreed to do is to add a 7 to 8 foot berm immediately adjacent to, about 10 feet from the fence, to add additional visual screening from the King Street properties towards the lot, so that if the commission sees fit to grant temporary and conditional permit to allow the storage to continue, that berm will be constructed within the next few weeks in accordance with the discussions that our clients have had with the neighbors in that regard. The effect of this temporary storage lot on the neighborhood is one thing that your regulation requires you to consider. So we took the opportunity to get some photographs done, and Peter, you want to pass those out, please?
Sure. If If COVID restrictions were in, I'd have to say different, but we're good. No, we're good, we're good. Okay.
Put one in the record. Thank you.
You're good? Anyone else?
Did you get one? Peter? Oh, you're sharing? And- So we've provided 6 photographs taken today. And the inset in the center of the first page shows you the direction of each of the numbered photographs that you see on the plan to try to give you an idea of the views from about 75 feet back from the fence, looking towards the fence, and then again, the view towards the houses that are on King Street. We also did some dimensional work to determine distances, and as you can see in the table that's provided for abutting property owners on King Street, we range from the nearest house or building is 381 feet from the fence, and we range all the way up to 634 feet from the fenced area. So we have a substantial distance. It's an open field. There is a tree boundary that separates the houses from the property that is the subject of this application, but we recognize that when the fall comes and the leaves come down, the obscurity that's caused by the current foliage is going to diminish substantially. So if you look at the larger blown-up pictures that follow the distance chart, you can see the fence with the screening. You can see the tops of the vehicles that are behind the fence. That would be picture 1A. Picture 2 is the opposite view, looking back away from the fenced-in area. 1B is further around the fenced-in area. Again, you can see the tops of trucks and the screening that's been attached to the fence that's been put in place. Photo 3 is the view towards the houses on King Street. And finally, 1C is at the very corner of the fenced-in storage area. You can see the kinds of trucks that are stored behind the fence. And then picture 4 is the view taken in the opposite direction towards one of the homes on King Street. So we're a substantial distance from the neighbors on King Street, but as a gesture and as an indication of their goodwill, our clients have indicated to the neighborhood that they will also erect a berm as additional screening outside of the fence. It'll generally follow the path of the fence to offer screening to the residential areas. Your regulation calls out the standards by which you are to judge the application for a temporary and conditional permit. And so I just want to review those. It's found in section 2.13A of your regulation. First of all, you're to consider public convenience and welfare as to be substantially served as the language of your regulation. The area to be used is immediately adjacent to the ongoing business of Hartford Truck Equipment, which is located on John Fitch Boulevard. All of the activity of vehicle storage will be conducted in a general commercial area, and that, as I'm sure the commission recognizes, would be a permitted use within that zone if it were associated with an ongoing activity. There would be no increase in traffic. All ingress and egress to the site will be through the John Fitch Boulevard access to the company grounds. There is no access proposed or contemplated from King Street. No traffic would be placed on King Street as a result of this, and there'll be no disturbance of any areas within the RR zone portion of this property. And since this activity is merely the parking of vehicles while they await the arrival of the equipment to be installed on them, there really is no noise or continuing activity that would act to disturb the neighbors who are anywhere from 300 to 600 feet away on King Street. So we think we satisfy that standard. We don't think that our proposal has any negative impact on or permanent injury on any neighboring property. As I indicated, properties to directly on the boundaries of this property, aside from the residences on King Street, are all commercial properties with the same kinds of activities. So we don't believe we have any negative impact or permanent injury to them. And with the distance to the residences on King Street and the addition of not only the fence but the berming, we think that we are making every effort to have little or no impact on the houses on King Street. And certainly, since this is a temporary permit, there can be no permanent injury to the properties on King Street, as this permit is only good for 2 years, then has to be renewed by an appearance before this commission. The commission would have every opportunity to deny any extension of that permit if it were an extension were sought. We acknowledge that, especially in the winter months, neighbors on King Street will be able to see through to the area where the vehicles will be stored. But as I indicated, in addition to the fence screening, we propose a berm that will also screen the view from the neighbors in the King Street area. As I indicated, Derek and Blake intend to bring forward a comprehensive plan to develop their site on a more permanent basis, to continue to grow their business within the permission of the zoning regulations in South Windsor. They're not going to initiate that plan until they have completely vetted it with the neighbors and come to understand all of the impacts that can be either avoided or reduced on the neighbors on the King Street side. Their intention is to, as I indicated, to be good neighbors and to work cooperatively with the neighborhood in a way that allows them to continue to grow their business but doesn't have a negative impact on people living on King Street. There are no traffic hazards that can be created by this. Everything is internal to the Hartford Truck Equipment site. No traffic other than what normally comes to their site is contemplated by this temporary permit. As I indicated, there is no access from King Street. We're not aware of any other hazards that would be created as a result of this. And while we certainly acknowledge that it would have been much better for us to have filed the application and been heard before the notice of violation was issued, we anticipated bringing this forward in May by our filing on May 21st, and due to circumstances beyond everyone's control, we got all the way to July 27th before we could have a public hearing. It was never their intention to willfully violate the zoning regulations. They were caught between a supply chain breakdown and a surge in vehicles based on commitments that they had made in the past. And so we would ask that you give fair consideration to their application and provide them with a temporary opportunity to park the vehicles here until we can bring forward a permanent plan and until the supply chain issues are resolved. I'm happy to answer any questions. Peter DeMalley is here and can answer questions, and Blake and Derek are also here if there's an operational question that they might be able to answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll turn to our town staff. Jeff Folger.
Thank you. I'm going to read a report prepared by Michelle Leip, the Director of Planning.
See if you can pull that mic just a hair closer. Awesome.
How's that?
That's much better.
Okay.
Day and night.
This is for application 21-30P Hartford Truck Temporary and Conditional Permit. Number one, this is a request for a 2-year temporary and conditional permit for a truck storage area to accommodate 100 trucks, approximately 1 acre in size, on the generally commercially zoned land on property located at 542 King Street, both GC and RR zones. Number two, the applicant has provided a site layout for the proposed storage area. The location is directly behind 2 businesses on Route 5 and abuts residentially zoned land that extends to King Street and is owned by the applicant. Number three, the site is a sandy lot with grass vegetation. The storage area, which has already been installed, is surrounded by a chain link fence, can accommodate 100 12 by 20-foot truck parking spaces with a 20-foot drive aisle between them. The intent is to store new trucks in this area until they are fitted out with truck beds, bodies, etc., tailored to the customer. All vehicles will be dropped off at the existing business for Hartford Truck at 95 John Fitch Boulevard and moved into this area from there. There is no access proposed from King Street. The applicant narrative indicates their intent to submit a site plan showing expansion of the existing business, and at that time, a buffer requirement would have to be designed per our regulations. For this request, the applicant has added mesh screening along the fence to provide some initial screening for the activity. The wording of the TNC permit regulation is that temporary and conditional permits may be granted by the Commission for a period not to exceed 2 years. Such approval may be given after a public hearing if, in the judgment of the Commission, the public convenience and welfare will be substantially served and the appropriate use of neighboring property will not be substantially or permanently injured, and traffic and other hazard will not result from such use. If this application is approved, staff would recommend that the applicant submit a site plan for this permitted use, including addressing the buffer requirements. And that concludes the report.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you. I have no comments on this application.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we will turn to members of the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward to the podium. There should be a sign-in sheet up there. Yeah, if you could move that, that'd be great, Peter. Thank you.
There's no sheet there, Mr. Chair.
Jeff, do we have one, or Caitlin? If not, I see Jeff's possibly manufacturing one. So, okay, so is anyone would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Introduce yourself to the commission.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Jay Samsel. I reside at 333 Deming Street in South Windsor. I am in favor of this proposal. I've been doing business with Hartford Truck for many years. I think it's a little bit over 25 years, because when their dad owned it, it came in as a little garage that they had, and you waited in line. It's a business that has flourished. They're expanding. I give them great credit for what they do. I think they have a neat and clean operation, and they really worry about the neighborhood and the appearance of what may be out front or to the side or to the King Street side. I've never noticed them to throw any of the garbage out. They've kept a clean operation throughout their business years, and I hope that they expand even more. They are a business that in New England is probably one of the biggest businesses around for truck bodies, snowplow parts, snowplows. Again, a business like that, a family-run operation here in town is a big plus for our town, and I wish them luck in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns they'd like to address? Please step forward.
Good evening. My name is Tom Russo. I live on 561 King Street. It's one of the properties that you can see on the map that they've shown. I do want to go on record as saying I'm not standing here in totally against the proposal from Hartford Trucking, but I do have some concerns as this process went on over the last couple of months. First, before I get into some of the concerns with the actual application that they proposed for this permit, in regards to a timeline, I'd like the council just to educate me a little bit. I've been in the town of South Windsor for 15 years now on this street, and my wife also is a small business owner in this town, so I'm very aware of the protocols. In regards to the fact that they made a business decision to move forward with this proposal prior to tonight, prior to approval, and prior to receiving this permit, this temporary permit, as their attorney eloquently stated, they received a letter of violation as there was concerns that was brought to, I believe, Michelle, who I don't believe she's here tonight, but about what was going on. Michelle explained that they would be notified of the fact that they need to stop until basically tonight happens and we can talk about some of these concerns. We understand at this point they made a business decision not to do that. I guess my question is, in regards to a general question, not specifically to Hartford Truck, is that when businesses make a decision to move forward with a proposal prior to a meeting, prior to any due diligence to discuss it, what type of ramifications or what really can be done at that point to let business owners in South Windsor know that there's a reason for this process that we're all here to discuss today. I'm not looking at this point, like I said, to hurt Hartford Truck in any way or punish it. But if from just as a concerned resident in South Windsor, what procedures are in place once a business in South Windsor makes a decision to move forward prior to any meeting? What can be done at that point? Can someone here educate me? Because my understanding is neighbors called and Michelle basically said, well, there's not much we can do. They understand that this will probably hurt their chances in the future for, future projects and things like that. They really shouldn't be wanting to upset their neighbors, and I get all of that. But I guess as other, this is just one meeting in time. You guys have a lot of businesses on your website that come in here with proposals, I'm sure that this council and the time that you guys take to discuss this and go over the safety concerns and everything that gets put forward by different companies, if they make a business decision not to wait, and I understand the reasons behind it, and many are financially motivated, what can be done to let businesses know that, there's a reason why this process is in place, and if you don't wait, that there's some ramifications. Is there anything in place?
Okay. Is that your only concern?
That's my question for this, and then I'll explain my concerns about the permit.
Okay.
that-
Generally, what this forum is you address the commission, and then you conclude, we hear from everybody else. We're taking notes as we go along. So it's not a back and forth debate, it's really,
I understand, but is there anything in place if a business receives a letter of violation but decides to proceed without waiting for a hearing to go forward with their proposal? Do you understand my question?
Yes, I do.
Because from my perspective, as a resident, as a business, you have a decision to make, right? You either move forward or you wait till a hearing for your permit. If they decided to move forward for make a business decision, but my point is, is there any when this process happened, when a business decides to violate that and receive a letter and proceed with the application, is there any ramifications, or is just you wait till tonight, they ask for forgiveness and you move on? I'm just curious as a resident.
yeah, once, like I say, once the public comment is done, we'll address those concerns as part of us commissioners and town staff.
Okay, that's fine. I'm going to make a recommendation. I think you should look at your process, because when you have, and this is not against Hartford Trucking, this is in general for South Windsor. When you have a company that proposes an application, okay, and sometimes with those applications, he had stated that there was not going to be any right-of-way from King Street. But what if their proposal did have a right-of-way? What if there was trucks that were going to be coming in from King Street? I have 3 children. There's children on that road. So if you decide to go through with a proposal like that without having a meeting like this and talking about the concerns, and an injury happens to anybody, then you're in a different place, because there was really nothing done to have the company, whether what company it is, make a decision on whether to proceed. Something that would be a recommendation to you is that when a company decides to violate a process that you guys have in place for many years, you should send them a letter of violation that says, we know that you've proceeded, but you need to stop and desist of what you're doing. And if you don't, after so many days, you will be fined so much money per day. That way, as a business, you can decide whether that's the right thing to do or not the right thing to do. They made a decision, right? They had trucks coming in, and I can probably see that conversation. What do we do? Do we make a decision to park these trucks down the street and pay for a parking lot, or do we park it on our own property? Right. And they decided to park it on their property. Now, in regards to their application, and I did go to their meeting last week at Hartford Truck, and so they're very familiar with the concerns that I had. And like I told them, nothing against Hartford Truck. I think they're a great company, and I want them to succeed in South Windsor. The problem that I had, obviously, with this entire project that they had proposed was, A, the fact that they just moved forward with it and created this parking lot. For 15 years prior to this, what was there was an open field of vegetation, okay? And during the last couple months, what happened to the field is the field was cleared, trees were cut. A few days later, trucks were parked, there was a steel fence that was put up, and for the last month and a half, if you lived on King Street, when you pull out of your driveway, your house, you take a left, you're looking at a parking lot in the middle of a field of 100 trucks. Now, I'm sure, if all of you, and I don't know exactly where you live, if you walked out of your house one day and you saw a parking lot full of 100 trucks, you'd probably have the same concerns that I have. And really what they, in regards to this application, I know the attorney had stated that, and these were the concerns that I brought up in the last meeting, that I'm recommending that they put a berm in front of this fence. And like I told them, the parking lot is on, I understand, commercially zoned property. Don't have an issue with the trucks, where it's located, or the property that it's on. I told them last week at their meeting, I fully understand that this proposal, just based on some maybe deliberation tonight and some negotiations between the both of us, will be approved. And I want to say I'm not against this permit being approved for them. I want to be clear about that. But what I am against is the fact that, as a neighbor who, when I walk out my front door, I do see these trucks. When even today, you don't have to wait for the fall or the winter time. I don't want to have to walk down the street or open my front door and see this parking lot. Okay, they need to do what they should have done. Besides waiting, they didn't wait, okay, but they should have put up some type of barrier. What they did instead, and I know it was because they had to survey the land, is they went and cleared the lot. So whatever area that they had, or vegetation to actually block this parking lot, is now wide open. So they actually cleared the lot. So now you can see it very clearly, and it's not a beautiful sight. Okay, there was a steel fence there with trucks on it for a month, and then over the last couple weeks, they put this mesh in front of it. And after the first thunderstorm that we had, half that mesh came down, so we were all looking at it. So, you know, at this point, what my suggestion is, besides my concern in regards to the overall process is, if this is going to be approved, I know that the attorney did stipulate that they're willing to put now an 8-foot berm in front of that fence, which I'm in support of, but I would like some details with that berm. I just don't want them, dumping 8 foot of fill in front of it. What should be done is it should be done right and correctly. What I mean by that is, as you know, with the other businesses that have opened up here in South Windsor, the many big ones, Home Depot, Coca-Cola, we've all seen them, FedEx, when they're putting berms up, you have to do it right. You have to put vegetation on it. You have to put grass on it. You have to put evergreens on it so that when December comes around, we don't have to look at a parking lot full of trucks from our yard. So I just want to be clear on that. Like I said, I'm not against the parking lot being put there. I think if it's done correctly, we can both survive in this environment. They can, have an area to store their trucks and prosper as a business, but the neighbors, like I said, don't have to have this view, ongoing for the years to come. So, I appreciate your time, and like I said, if this is going to be approved, I just ask that berm gets created. Please put a timeline to it. This, like I said, these guys are a trucking company. These guys aren't a printing company. With a couple phone calls on their Rolodexes, they have several companies that they sell dump trucks to that can come in there within a few days, put down the right fill, put down some vegetation, some grass, and some evergreens so that the property can look the way it's supposed to look, and the neighbors on King Street don't need to see this anymore. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who has any questions, concerns, or complaints about this application? Please step forward.
Hi, my name is Jessica. I'm at 510 King Street. One of the pictures on there.
Could we get your last name, Jessica?
Ucello.
Pardon me?
Ucello.
Okay. Okay.
When this started happening, we got the letters. Saw some things happening, heard some wood chippers going, some chainsaws. It's a holiday weekend. Came across kind of suspect. After a couple of days, tried to calm down a little bit. I went and spoke to Blake. I went directly into Hartford Trucking, and I approached him and said, "What's going on?" We had a very open and honest discussion. We have met a couple of times as neighbors to try and work this out. Obviously, we as neighbors have concern. My house is one of those pictures that's up there, but it seems to me like, just like when you're staging a house for pictures, pictures can be misleading because I have a very different set of pictures where we can see the trucks very clearly. I believe in Derek and Blake's ambition and their drive. And of course, we want to see the mom and pops survive and not be driven out. I am not against their plans. I am 100% against how it happened. I can see all of the trucks fairly clearly from my second floor window. It does affect my property value because who's going to buy a house overlooking a trucking parking lot? It's not going to retain its value that way. I am 100% for the berm idea. I think that the way that things were presented tonight were very picture perfect and that their attorney did a great job. On that note, it's not as pretty as it's being made out to be. It's actually quite awful, and you can see it quite clearly. And the trees that are blocking it are actually that area of overgrowth that has not been plowed down yet. So it's not a very regulated area. I think that could be done better. We bought in South Windsor for a reason. My parents were high school sweethearts here. Some of you probably know them. It's a good town, good values, blue collar. We put everything we have into our house. And it's scary. If Blake and Derek very specifically do what they say they're going to do, I'm for it. The way their lawyer spoke made me a little bit more nervous than anything. I ask you to use your judgment and to protect our property values and our neighborhood. And I leave that to your discretion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward.
Hi, my name is Robert Usello. I also live at 510 King Street. I'm just going to be quick about this. As you can see on the paperwork there, we're probably the closest one to the property. So we have pretty much a direct site right there. As my wife said, there is a little bit of overgrowth at this point when they took the pictures yesterday or today. It looks like it's hidden. From our perspective, it really isn't. As soon as fall comes, all that stuff comes down, and it's a direct view. I see that they are trying to do what they can to block it for now. Again, we weren't thrilled with the way it happened. It was a holiday weekend. Couldn't get a hold of anybody from the town. The land was cleared. Trucks were parked. It was a big surprise to us. The green tarp helps, but as Tom said, as soon as the first storm came, it got twisted all up, and it stayed like that for several weeks. So we are very concerned about our property values. We're concerned about our view to commercial businesses. Again, we're not against the mom and pop shops. We do like Blake and the company growing there. We just don't want it to impede. And I know they said there's some other plans that they're looking into later down the road with the rest of the property. So I'm here to say that we are watching, we are aware that they want to expand, and we're concerned about what kind of expansion is going to lead to. So, and that's it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, I'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. So with this being an open area that does store vehicles, has the company expressed any concerns regarding the security of the items that are being stored? And if so, are there any other security measures in place besides that fence to address these, or are there any other planned security measures that will be taken?
Yes, thank you. It's a good question, and the answer is yes. Hartford Truck Equipment has a security guard on site through every night so that the site is secured by personnel 24/7. During their business hours, they're obviously there. When the business is closed, the security guard is on site.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm somewhat moved by the comments made by some of the neighbors, and I think we have to be very conscientious about taking them very seriously. I do support the idea of the berms and the evergreens and such, and I would like to believe that the applicants will be in total compliance if this moves ahead. I want to approach something from a little different point of view, though. So I follow the automotive industry, and I'm well aware, as most people here probably are, about the supply chain issues. We see it in lots of things we buy. So the application is for a 2-year conditional permit. Do your clients think that it's going to take 2 years to resolve the supply chain issue?
It could be up to 2 years before all these matters are resolved. Obviously, there'll be, we hope, improvements during that period of time, but the appearance is that it's taking longer than anyone expected for the automotive industry in general to get back up to production. So being very conservative, what I want to say is that it may very well be 2 years before they're able to get their supplies as on a as timely a basis as they have in the past.
So I understand the regulations do say for a period not to exceed 2 years, but I'm just wondering, and I'll wonder out loud, if maybe there might be a resolution to this issue by making that a shorter period of time. I'm not necessarily recommending that, I'm just posing that question, so something to consider, and maybe my fellow commissioners will want to pursue that a little bit more.
I would agree with you that the commission has the discretion to say, we'll do it for a year, and then we want you to come back and report to us as to the status of matters. That would not be outside the scope of this regulation, in my opinion. I think that the 2-year time period was framed and drafted into the regulation to perhaps avoid having things come back on too short a time frame so that whatever problem was to be resolved isn't fully resolved. That would be my guess as to why it's set at 2 years. But again, I agree with you that it's within the discretion of the commission.
Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Dexter.
Just a couple. I heard about neighbors not wanting to see, but is there any noise issues? Is there any security lighting in this storage area?
There is no.
There's no lighting, right?
No lighting, and the only noise is the trucks being parked or then being taken out to
So
be
no
worked on.
idling of vehicles, no work done in this area? They bring them in, they close them down, and they leave,
Correct.
right?
That's correct.
Okay, and what are the hours that they would be moving trucks? Until what time?
Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. is the time that the business is open.
Okay, okay, no further questions.
Okay, Commissioner Bonzani.
Yeah, thank you. So on top of this berm that they said they definitely will put in, I know people said they would like to see, but what is the plan? Is it gonna be evergreens? Is it gonna be, just grass? What is the plan for the berm, as the neighbors really would like to know the actual plan?
Our plan for this berm is that it's a temporary berm that goes right along with the temporary permit that we seek. Our plan is to come back to this commission with a full-scale development plan that contemplates resolving issues like this with a permanent development in accordance with your zoning regulations. So to us, it doesn't make sense to go through the process of planting long-term plants on this berm because we're going to take them out when this storage area goes away and a more permanent plan is put in place to protect the people on King Street. This berm will be taken down. It's anticipated at the moment that it will be constituted of wood chips rather than fill, that we would get a steady supply of wood chips and put an 8-foot berm, probably be 15 or 18 feet at its base, and then piled up in that way. Then those materials can be used later when the site is fully developed. That's our plan.
Now, 100, I mean, I've used Hartford Truck Equipment, they're a great company. 100 trucks, just seems like an awful lot to me, to have sit there and wait for their bodies, their truck bodies, their service bodies. I mean, I'm in the business, but what did they do before? I mean, I know that it's a lot different with the pandemic and everything, but I mean, it just seems like 100 trucks sitting there waiting to be done. I mean, companies don't sit there and wait for weeks and months for their trucks. You know, I just, did they have like a 20 truck waiting before?
They have a fairly substantial parking area on their site on John Fitch Boulevard. And typically that site was able to accommodate the turnover of trucks because trucks weren't there very long. But now it's just a matter of that for this period of time where they can't get the equipment to install, the trucks keep coming because people are accepting delivery of the trucks and they can't make use of them until they're outfitted. So it's a dilemma that they have. That area is likely not to hold 100 trucks right now. There are about 75 trucks in there, and it seems to be pretty much at capacity.
And then the last question, I think Stephanie did ask about security lighting. There's no plan to put any extra lighting at all?
No lighting within that parking area.
All right, thank you, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Foley.
Quick question, again, we're gonna go towards the concerns of the neighbors with the berm. The dotted hashed line that delineates the general commercial zone. I guess my question would be, from the north and south boundaries across that, to alleviate anything having to be invested in for temporary and conditional purposes, would Blake and Derek be willing to put an evergreen buffer across that easterly side of the GC zone so it's not temporary? I don't know if that fits with the long-term plan. Unless you're telling me your long-term plan is heading to the RR zone, you want a hint, but can we do something where they're not reinvesting twice?
They would be, under the current thinking that we have, we would be planting and then unplanting. That's where we stand right now. But that plan is not anywhere near final. That's what, we don't have it with us tonight because we don't want to put it on out in the public because it's not final. We haven't met with the neighbors. We haven't shown them what we propose to do that will effectively provide screening to them. We don't think this berm, the berm that we propose along the fence, is not a permanent solution. It's a temporary solution to a temporary permit, and that's the way we're treating it.
All right, well, let's just say, well, Blake, you want to come up? I know you don't want to, but I'm going to ask you to. So in lieu of the fabric that's D-ringed to the fence, would you be open to putting in the permanent slat that goes into the temporary fence so that?
That goes within inside the chain link?
Correct.
I am not opposed to that.
I think that would be one of the conditions I would like to. That way we're not dealing with the fabric, because we know what happens. Over time, UV rays
Especially
break
with all
down
the
the
wind we've had
fabric, and
recently.
next thing you know, it's flying in the breeze, and it's not fair to your budding neighbors. I keep going back to this temporary. I'm good with Blake. I just needed either Derek or him to say, yes, we're willing to invest, and not you or not Peter.
It's
so.
not my money.
All right, so, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. First of all, despite all the, what I would call errors in the actions you took, I'm really happy to see a business growing in town. I'm in the process of getting wood floors installed in my house, and I'm losing months before that wood shows up. So I can understand this is affecting many different parts of our economy. There's an aerial photo that was handed to us.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you have an idea of the date of that, because obviously it doesn't show the trucks that you're parking there. And it,
2016 is.
That should be the,
So
that's
this is
the,
the-
that's the 2019 air photo?
Oh, that's your, oh, I thought it was the one we had.
is it 2019? Okay.
Sorry, that was from Jeff.
So, Mrs. Gisela, I think I got the name right, mentioned that there is some vegetation that, I don't know, is it, you know, sort of doing a half-baked job of shielding the trucks, or where is the vegetation that's?
The vegetation that, I believe she's. Thanks. So Peter will point it out.
I mean, I see vegetation along the property line, the southern, I guess that's southern property line.
Here, I'll hold it and you talk.
Okay, on the handout that you have, Exhibit 3, or picture image 3, goes basically in a southwesterly direction from the middle of our parking field toward Mrs. Usello, Mr. and Mrs. Usello's property, for example. Is that where you're referring to, that area? Because this shows, Exhibit 3, it shows there's probably the second floor of the house right there in the middle, the white light color. And then you've got a substantial deciduous vegetation there, which in the winter, of course, we far
Okay.
less.
So you're talking about the vegetation on King Street?
Yeah, well, no, this is to the rear of their houses, and then it goes along King Street. And if you look at Exhibit 2, that's also along King Street on the left side, and then the house to the northwest corner of the site is that light-colored building.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this picture and I see some trees here. Is that what we're talking about? Up by King Street?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and I can understand that, yeah, those
Okay.
are all deciduous trees. It looks like this picture was actually taken in the winter. And they're not going to provide much shielding, especially in the winter.
There's one image from the south side, and it's looking at, there's a vegetation pocket in between,
Yeah.
midpoint.
But that's not helping. What is the timing that this berm would go in? I mean, if we give you a temporary conditional permit for 2 years, is it going to go in?
It can go, you're talking about the permanent berm or the temporary?
Well, the temporary berm.
Temporary berm can be put in a matter of weeks. They've already talked to some vendors today who even suggested the material.
So there's
It was
no shortage.
readily available, could be implemented immediately within the next few weeks. Could be implemented and get it up, and it will be higher than any of the height is much higher than any of the vehicles that are behind there. So
Okay.
therefore, we don't think we need vegetation on top of it, and it's a temporary measure, but we're going to be coming in with a plan, Mr. Attorney Alter alluded to, a plan to address that on a permanent solution. There are many different options between their houses and the development, proposed development, that can address that. Many different options.
Okay. How long will this berm be? I noticed the parking area, I already forgot the number. Looks like it's 300 feet long.
It would be along the entire side facing King Street, and then along the side towards the Usello property. Obviously, the east side faces the business operation, and the northeast is the access from the Hartford truck equipment property into the parking area. So it would be along the long side that faces King Street and the shorter leg of the rectangle that is closest to the Usello property.
So I guess I would ask that the town staff review a drawing of the proposed berm before you put it in to make sure it actually provides the intended barrier that we need.
We're not opposed to having staff take a look at it.
Mrs. Usello, again, I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong. Really was looking out her second floor window, and the trucks were not being at all shielded from that point of view, looking down over the fence that's there. I don't know if, I mean, as a temporary measure, how high is this berm going to be?
About 8 feet.
8 feet, and how far will it be from the nearest truck? I mean, will it be on the residential or in the 50?
The house is 381 feet from the fence.
And the berm will be, what, in the 50-foot setback or on the residential's?
10 feet from the fence.
10 feet from the fence, okay. And again, I'll ask the staff to just review that for us when you come in with a proposed temporary design. Okay, let's see. All right, I guess I'm just, I mean, congratulations on having a business that's growing. This is a little bit of a rough spot, and I hope we can get this resolved so everybody continues to be proud of the business and happy to have it there. Thank you.
Commissioner LeBlanc.
Thank you. I'm looking at a picture, this one right here, it has the view from King Street. Looks like it was
Number in the
6.
bottom left corner, there should be.
Yeah, it looks like there's a 6-foot high fence, with the cloth measure on it. I'm looking at the tops of trucks. Right, that one right there.
It's picture 1A.
So I'm assuming that the land slopes upward towards the trucks. I'm looking into the windshield of some of these vehicles from the vantage point of the neighbors of the property. I do suggest from the temporary measure until this berm actually is installed, that an 8-foot fence is put in. I mean, I'd like to see the business grow and everything, but shame on not coming to us beforehand. This is pretty unsightly. In my view, if I lived next to that, I wouldn't be too pleased sitting here right now. All right? I do suggest that the slots are installed into the fence as well. These are the PVC. They come in green and different colors. They hold up better in thunderstorms as opposed to some rolled out cloth. And I do expect that that is maintained with the changes in temperatures and through the seasons. Those do get wrecked as well until that permanent berm or whatever you're going to do in the future is installed. I think that would be a good measure for the neighbors next door as far as their viewpoint goes until the permanent installation is done. That's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Alan Cavagnero, I want to officially welcome you to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Alan has just been appointed as an alternate, and here's your shot. Enjoy.
Thank you. I have just a few things. Definitely appreciate the public coming out tonight to comment on this. It was a bit concerning hearing some of the things being brought forward with either being left out of the loop, and of course it is, like I said, very concerning when it comes to land value, for example. So I'll just go off of that and not only support the berm, but also like to see vegetation with it as well, anything to accommodate the residents along King Street, because their land value shouldn't go down due to no fault of their own. Not only that, also took notes, we already established that there will be no lights for this parking lot, or for this. I'm curious, is there any reason? I know there will be a security guard like mentioned. I'm just curious why.
To avoid causing any issues with the neighbors by having temporary lights.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if lights were considered previously, but at a lower elevation. So yeah, and I hope as well when winter rolls around, when a lot of the stuff goes away, it's still not only an eyesore, but it is still looked at and kept and maintained. So yeah, besides those comments, that is all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jeff Folger, would you like to state the violation procedure? I mean, I have a rough understanding of it, but it might be better coming from you if you could address some of what the residents' concerns were.
Sure, I'd be happy to. First of all, I'd just like to open to say that zoning violations are considered civil and not criminal violations. So the town doesn't have an authority to, with force, stop a violation like that. Our usual procedure is to issue a notice of violation, which would explain the violation to the violator, and then provide a time frame with which to rectify the situation. If that's ignored, then our next step would be to issue a cease and desist order. And the cease and desist order, again, would basically reiterate the violation and a means to rectify the violation, and then also a time frame, which we expect it to do. If that's ignored, then the only recourse we have at this point in time is to go to court and get an injunction. So that's usually a pretty lengthy process, as you can imagine. At this current time, we do not have the authority to levy fines. And that may be something that the commission would consider, because that is something that could be done. Certainly the Wetland Commission can levy fines, but it's something that the commission would have to adopt formally and then get approved by the town council on it. So with an application that we know is pending, even though they did violate it and we don't like it, there's very little physically that we can do to stop them from it at this point. Now, if there's a violation that has an immediate concern of health and welfare, we can go right to a cease and desist order as opposed to a notice of violation, which we have done in the past in some instances.
Okay, thank you. The berm, will that be located in the GC zone or the RR zone?
It'll be,
The temporary berm?
the berm can be within the GC zone. If we start about 10 feet from the fence, it appears that we have enough room to do it within the GC zone.
Okay. Can you show me exactly on this plan, by drawing a line, where the berm will be?
Sorry?
Could you please approach and watch your step? I'd like you to come over here and draw a line exactly where the berm will be. Over here on this plan right here? Yeah, this is the one I'm looking at. That one's a little too far away. You've got your choice. I mean, you can, it might be better to draw it on this one.
That works better, I think, because this has the lot on it.
Yep, not too much talking because you don't have a mic, you're not mic'd up. Okay, so it's reflected that it would go along the temporary fence for the entire length of the fence, and then on the south side, I believe, returning, how far would it be returning?
About half the length of the fence.
Microphone, please.
It would be a return of about half the length of the fence on that short side.
And there's nothing proposed for the north side, correct?
The
At
north
this-
side is the access side for, you're talking about the opposite short side.
Correct.
The opposite short side is where the access from the paved parking lot is, so there would be nothing there because that's how you get in and out of the parking area. And then there would be nothing proposed on what I'm calling the east side, because that faces the building, the commercial buildings that are on John Fitch Boulevard.
Okay. I listened carefully to when the berm would be going in. I heard it can be done in the next 2 weeks, but I'd like a commitment of when it will be completed by.
Assuming that Design Professionals provides a drawing to town staff, if that's how you would want this to go, just so they look at it. 2 weeks after staff says it's okay to proceed, the berm will be in.
Well, we're talking an 8-foot wood chip berm, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm not, Jeff, I mean, I don't see much approving of that. Do you? Do you foresee, is there gonna be much planning to that?
Not if it's going to be a wood chip surface. It doesn't necessarily have to be topsoil.
Right.
It could be fill.
If it's
On it,
temporary,
If it's temporary, if there's any thought of planting on it at some point, then obviously we would want, you know, an appropriate amount of topsoil on top of that.
okay,
That's not our plan.
yeah. So we should probably, why the topsoil on top of a temporary berm, Jeff? Just so it,
No, like I said, if all the commission's willing to agree to is a wood chip berm, then you could use any kind of fill material for the berm itself, because it's going to be covered with basically a wood mulch surface to it. And we would obviously be concerned about dust, so we would want a good coverage on the surface. Certainly don't want dust heading towards the residential area or across Route 5 as well. So we'd want you know, possibly material that could be spec'd out for that purpose of you know, maybe a coarser material.
okay. Mr. Russo, could you please step forward? Is that your understanding of how the berm, temporary berm was being?
Yeah, I guess I appreciate everyone's concern about, you know, our view and doing something with the berm. I guess my comment is that there's a lot of talk here about the fact that we're moving towards a wood chip berm because this is temporary. This is temporary. And I guess let's look at that word temporary, because a little while ago, Mr. Bernstein just commented that this is a 2-year permit. So theoretically, are we saying that we could be looking at a temporary berm for the next 2 years? That's something that I'm looking at. In regards to the fact that, you know, why do something, then you have to do it again. If they would do this berm correctly, and they could use some wood chips, put some topsoil on top, and then put some vegetation. The reality of that is that if it takes 2 years before they go towards their next project and they propose it, and we're all here again discussing their next plan, which would take some time, which could take another 2 years. My point is, their next proposal, which we saw, has a very large berm along King Street. There's no reason why that existing berm, that the temporary berm that we're talking about, could not be used in their permanent berm. There's nothing against taking fill, topsoil, and even evergreens that you start to grow and move that to the new berm. So I guess my concern is, I appreciate the fact that we're going to put a berm here. The comment came up about putting a higher fence. I mean, I think really reality is they probably could save money and not do a higher fence if they just put a correct berm. Save money on your fence. Maybe put in the green slats instead of that, you know, mesh that came down in the first storm. Put in the correct slats so we don't see it. Utilize that same fence, you know, so they can save money, but spend the money to do the berm right. Because if you're just going to put wood chips, come the wintertime, we're all looking at a mound of wood chips, okay? That doesn't look so nice. I don't know if you guys want to look at a mound of wood chips in front of your house when you get up in the morning, but we don't. So if they do the berm correctly, whether it's, I don't know in regards to the height of the trucks, but that can be measured, whether it's 8 feet, 9 feet, whatever it is, and put some soil, put some vegetation for the next 2 years, if it's going to take for them to get plans approved for the next project, at least the neighbors have something nice to look at. And there's nothing, you know, they're in the business of heavy equipment. Heavy equipment can move a berm very quickly. You take that soil, you move it to the front of King Street. A landscaper takes those evergreens and they replant them. this is not going to go to waste, you know? So that's my recommendation, and that's my concern with just putting wood chips there for the next 2 years. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I understand what the applicant's trying to do. How tall is that current fence that's there?
6 feet?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if, I'd really like to see a permanent berm there. I understand about your replanting concerns. But in 2 years, a permanent berm could grow a foot a year if it's, say, arborvitae's on top of it or whatever. If it was 8-foot wood chip berm, and that's 2 feet taller than the fence, I can't really see putting, you know, a different fence in there going through that added cost. But if they can do the slats in it instead of the mesh. I didn't see the berm on, as part of an approval condition, and I'm wondering if our town staff was made aware of that. When has the berm been discussed with anyone from planning?
No,
No. Okay,
just came up this afternoon.
okay. Then, in all fairness, I think it might be good to extend the public hearing and address this at our next meeting if we can fit it on the agenda. I don't have our,
That's August 17th.
yes. Is staff agreeable to that?
Yeah, can we ask for some more information then? So we would like to know details of this berm. We're not sure whether it's all wood chips or whether it's soil with wood chips on top of it.
Yep.
But we'd like to know that, and get, yeah, maybe a cross-section of it, or have it put on a plan so we can see where, everybody can see where it will go.
Especially if, you know, this is gonna be in the GC zone. It should be part of this application, this TNC application. So, you're willing to give, do you know, do they need an extension? Are they close? I mean, we got 65 days, but when was the application submitted? Oh, we have 65 days, or 35 days, I believe, from
From the opening of the
the
hearing,
opening.
so,
You have
Right,
35 days
35.
from tonight.
right.
right,
to Finish the public hearing.
So we're within
Right.
time.
okay.
August 17th is less than that.
We'll find some time on there for you.
If
Okay.
not, we have the power to give you an extension under the statute to get it to the next meeting after that.
Yep.
If you
Okay.
can't fit us on your agenda.
Great. So Commissioners, would someone like to make a motion to extend
Excuse
the
me.
public hearing to our next?
I guess I'd like to ask a couple more questions, if you don't mind.
Couple more questions for tonight?
Yes.
Okay, we are running late,
Well,
but I'll yield to Commissioner Wagner.
I guess I just also want to know how reliable is a wood chip berm? I want to make sure this is something that's not going to blow away in the 2-year period, and, you know, can we, you know, maybe we need to put a condition on that it be maintained or something like that, so you'll be
Yeah, I
looking
mean,
at that.
I think our concern is a wood chip berm may settle
Mhm.
and look unsightly over time. I don't think it'll blow away necessarily, but it's not
Settle,
gonna be
yeah,
a
right.
neat, nice-looking berm.
So they're going to have to maintain it at the 8-foot height. Okay, that's all I had.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So would someone like to make a motion?
I move we continue the hearing to August 17.
Okay, we have motion to move the public, or the continuation to August 17th. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. We'll see you in August. Thank you. Okay, our next item on our agenda is public hearing for application 21-31P, 1060 Main Street LLC. Do we have someone here to represent that application?
Yes, you do.
Okay, this one is Main Street. Two. 1060 Main Street.
All set? Ready when you are, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Peter Alter. I'm a lawyer. I practice.
Sorry.
It's all right. I practice law in Glastonbury with the firm of Alter and Pearson. Here tonight representing the owners of the property at 1060 Main Street, which I'm sure the commission is familiar with, is a former nursing home that has been shut down for some period of time, and a number of and a variety of potential uses have been suggested and tested out in the marketplace to make use of this existing building. I know there have been a lot of rumors in town that drug rehabilitation or other kinds of facilities might be located there. Our clients are experienced multifamily developers, both in New York and Connecticut. They have about 4,000 units that they own and operate. They're in the midst of a number of projects in Connecticut, Bloomfield, Enfield, this project in South Windsor, 2 projects in Hartford. So you have before you an applicant owner who is very experienced in the rehabilitation and repurposing of properties such as this one. You'll hear tonight from several people. Daniel Jameson is our project engineer from Design Professionals. Rachel Meyer is our landscape architect. And Sean Donadio is our architect, and he'll describe the building as it is to be repurposed. This is an application made under your elderly housing regulation, and it requires that the South Windsor Housing Authority be a co-applicant. So I just want to state for the record that the application is submitted both on behalf of our applicant, our client, and the South Windsor Housing Authority. They have signed on. We've worked with Attorney Alexander and Mr. Daniels, the Director of the Housing Authority. We appeared before the Housing Authority to present our plans to them. They enthusiastically endorsed the idea of creating 37 elderly housing units and repurposing this building. So the Housing Authority has joined with us in this application, as is required by your regulation. The plan that you have before you contemplates that housing would be limited to ages 62 and over. We did appear before the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency, secured the necessary approvals from that board as well, so that we're before you tonight with everything in order to move forward and ask you for an approval to allow the repurposing and reuse of this property as a 37-unit multifamily dwelling. It would have 21 one-bedroom units and 16 two-bedroom units. Sean will explain the apartment size mix and the development of the site. The site will have a community room, which has access for the residents. We have an interior courtyard. Again, 24 of the units have direct access into the courtyard from their units. All of the other units have access through dedicated corridors so that everyone can make use of the interior courtyard as well as the facilities to the rear of the property. One of the changes to the plan that Daniel will explain to you is that we now have a driveway that circumnavigates the building. The present configuration doesn't have that. That's in order to provide access to residents directly to their units. Each unit has a direct access to the outside. And it also increases emergency vehicle access around the property. So that's one of the proposals that you have before you. The site, as you're aware, is in the A40 zone. It is approximately 13 acres in size. Only the front portion of the property has been developed. The rear portion of the property has never been developed, and we propose no changes to the rear of the property. The plan of development for this owner is to use the existing footprint. There's no plan to expand it. Their business model is to make use of what's there rather than to create a new footprint. We meet all of the bulk requirements of the zone in terms of frontage, depth, and front and side yards, rear yards, building height. We are providing 78 parking spaces that we feel is adequate for the site. We have a new landscape plan that Rachel will go over in more detail. We are well below the requirements for lot coverage and below the permissible amount of impervious coverage on the site. So you have before you a plan that needs no waivers, doesn't require any relief, is fully compliant with all of your zoning regulations. The other point that I want to make is that we spent a lot of time with the neighbors in this area. Main Street neighbors are very interested in what might happen on this site. Attorney Hope from my office and Mr. DeMalley were able to meet with a number of the neighbors, particularly those who are immediately adjacent to our property. We think that the plan you have before you speaks to their requests and their needs in terms of buffering and in terms of protecting their property. That'll be discussed in a little more detail as the plans are displayed to you by Daniel and by Rachel. We spent time in that regard because we want people to appreciate that 62 and over multifamily housing development here with a repurposed and refurbished building, at least in our minds, is probably the highest and best use you could make of this property. It has no traffic impacts, no stormwater drainage impacts, no environmental impacts, and no impacts on the neighbors. It's about as quiet a use as you could hope for on a site like this. Even the nursing home before, with emergency vehicles and calls out for people in distress, would create more activity than what is proposed here. So we think that it's a good fit for Main Street. Our clients are excited about creating 37 units. We think it's consistent with your plan of conservation and development, the repurposing and reestablishment of buildings, creating some housing for a segment of the population that can make use of it and supported by the housing authority. We think all of those are good purposes to meet.
Excuse me, Peter,
Yes,
could you
sir.
drop this plan down, please? Or maybe put it on the side and, the public, this is a public hearing, and the public hearing, or public does have a right to view the plans. Thank you, I'm sorry.
No, my apologies. We should have done that before. So, as I indicated, we think we've had the opportunity to address neighborhood concerns, to speak with the neighbors, to help them understand the project and what is intended to be. And also, we're able to bring forward a project to South Windsor that will be a credit to the community and really a terrific reuse of a building that has stood empty now for a number of years. With that, I'm going to first ask Daniel Jameson, our project engineer, to come up and briefly summarize some of the engineering issues and design factors that he dealt with. We'll then hear from our project architect and then our landscape architect to conclude our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And for the record, my name is Daniel Jameson, professional engineer in the state of Connecticut and project manager at Design Professionals. I'm here today to discuss erosion controls, stormwater management, and water quality measures designed for the site. The primary site disturbance will occur to the east side of the building behind it, and within the grass area surrounding the existing building. As Peter mentioned, the existing building is to remain and be renovated, so won't be a full demolition of the existing building. But the surroundings around the building will be, the new concrete walks will be installed, new parking areas are proposed, and as Peter mentioned, we are providing a complete vehicle travelway around the buildings to provide better access for cars and emergency vehicles. For erosion controls, all the devices proposed were designed and sized based off of the CT 2002 sedimentation and erosion control guidelines. We are proposing temporary inlet protection for 2 dry wells on site. We are also proposing siltation basins at the two locations of the siltation basins proposed to serve long-term stormwater management treatment. Silt fence at uphill areas where potential discharge to downhill properties and neighboring properties may occur, or transmission of sediment to neighboring properties will occur. And also, a good thing about it is most of the existing pavement will remain intact. We are proposing new construction accesses where the new pavement will start on both the south and north side of the property. That just gives the construction operators or equipment operators choices to leave the site from the north or south sides. For stormwater management, as mentioned, those 2 stilling basins used for erosion control temporarily during construction will remain throughout the lifetime of the project or to serve as stormwater management for the property. These two basins will work with 2 existing dry wells on site to provide, attenuate the stormwater flows leaving the site to ensure that all proposed flows meet existing flows. We did do some deep test and percolation tests behind the existing building, and we did find that the soil in the area has the high potential to infiltrate stormwater, and so as such, the 2 stilling basins were designed accounting for infiltration rate. In addition to that, these 2 stilling basins were also sized to store 100% of the determined water quality volume for the site based off of recommendations made in the 2004 Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual. In addition to this, we did receive comments from Jeff Doolittle, the town engineer. He mentioned, he talked of a large tree on the northern property line that was shown to be removed, and just noting that we should notify the abutting property owner that this tree is proposed to be removed. And Peter, and as Peter Alter mentioned, Megan Hope from his office did discuss that with the neighbor, and the neighbor wants the tree to be removed. They're concerned of the low-hanging limbs on their side of the property and the posed health and safety risks for their fenced horses that are enclosed in the property. Jeff also mentioned that the proposed electric vehicle chargers to be installed should be made level 2 ready, and our owner has no problem with that, to provide level 2 ready charger ports for electric vehicles. Jeff asked that we could make sidewalks adjacent to curb at least 5 feet wide, and sidewalk adjacent to parking spaces 6 feet wide, and we're happy to accommodate that, and we'll show that in our final plans if, I believe it was shown already, but we're happy to provide that. Also, the concrete sidewalks along the main driveway just need to be installed with ADA ramps, and we did propose warnings, our revised plans propose detectable warning strips to indicate where the sidewalk ramp starts. So we had no problem with that as well. And also just a discussion on how the stilling basins will handle water if they were to back up, and with water, be filled with water. And basically, the stilling basins are expect to infiltrate based off of our deep test pit observations. And we are proposing a spillway that is set 1 foot more, or 1 foot plus below the finished floor elevation of the building. So if water was to back up, or water would still be in that storm, those wide spilling basins, the southern one is 35 feet long, and I'm sorry, the southern one is 55 feet long, and the northern one, I believe, is 35 feet long. But those spillways would allow the water to be released to the downstream areas where they go currently today, before water would back up into sensitive areas like the building or parking spaces as well. So with that, I will now turn it over to our project architect and principal of Northeast Collaborative Architects, Sean Donadio.
Excuse me, for the record, Peter Malley, just going to submit a letter from an abutter that we received tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening on this dark and stormy night. My name is Sean Donadio. I am a principal with Northeast Collaborative Architects. I am from our Middletown office. I am very pleased to be the architect working on the project. I'll talk through quickly some of the information in regards to what we're looking to do to reuse this 1960 building. As you all know, the convalescent home had central corridors that made the building work with individual rooms off of that corridor. What we're looking to do is to create front to back apartments, being front on the perimeter exterior of the building, and the interior being open into the courtyards. As it has been mentioned, we're looking to have 37 units. They will range from 1 bedroom to 2 bedrooms. The 1 bedrooms, most of them are on the smaller side, 575 square feet to our larger units of 800 square feet. Our 2 bedrooms are 870 square feet to the largest one being 1,180 square feet. We also are including within the numbers 2 units in each of the 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom that can be adaptable to accommodate type A ADA transformation. So we're eliminating the corridors. We're creating units that go front to back. We're utilizing the openings for the windows to create entry doors for each of the units on the perimeter. There will be a couple of units on the corners where there weren't any windows that we will be doing new openings to accommodate those entry doors. All of the bedrooms have exterior windows. The building had some great windows and views to the courtyards and to the landscape. A couple of the units also have dens and bonus offices. That was just in being very creative with reusing the building footprint. Again, like it had been mentioned, we haven't added any square feet. We are creatively utilizing the existing building. We do have a community room which will be for the residents. It was in a space that wouldn't allow for adequate windows to make it into a unit. So it was a creative solution to create a space that would accommodate the residents to have larger gatherings that wouldn't be able to be done within their smaller units. So on the exterior, we're looking at doing minimal changes. The brick and the stone and some of the exterior will be cleaned and kept. We're looking at redoing the vinyl siding, the gutters, and the trim. That has really come to its life expectancy, and we're looking to revamp those and the similar color systems, but it will give new life to the building. The roof and the windows were recently updated, so they will remain as is. Within the mechanical, of course, the convalescent had a central system. We're looking at doing individual systems for each of the units. We will be keeping the existing fire suppression system with some minor alterations that will allow us to have a safer building. The water and the sanitary lines that support the facility will be reutilized. Of course, we will have less usage than the convalescent home had. We're looking to utilize new HVAC systems that will be ducted throughout the units, so there'll be some ductwork internally within the units that will support both the living rooms and the bedrooms. We're not doing the wall-hung Mitsubishi systems, which are cheaper, but they're not as efficient. We chose to do something a little bit more efficient. There will be new condensing units outside of each of the units. There'll be one per unit. The only stipulation is because of the community room, it needed 2 based on the square footage that space will be. We will be doing screening too. So it will allow for fresh air intake and exhaust, and it will be ducted. The only other point that I wanted to make sure that I made you aware of is that we will be doing point system hot water systems, so it won't have the larger hot water boiler systems. It will be point use, which utilizes less power and is more efficient. So we're trying to be as efficient as possible, trying to create very efficient, smaller units that will give a diversity to people that are looking to be residents here. Like was mentioned, I just wanted to point out on the color plan, you'll see some pink bars. Those are the corridors that allow each of the tenants that are not having bedrooms opening onto the courtyard to also utilize that courtyard as a quiet space. And next we'll describe the landscape.
Good evening, Commission. For the record again, my name is Rachel Meyer. I am the Senior Landscape Designer here in town with Design Professionals to discuss our landscape and lighting design with you. Our intention for those designs in this project are not only to provide full compliance with the zoning regulations, but also respect the privacy of our neighbors as we've discussed in preliminary meetings with them and hearing their concerns, as well as enhancing the very well-established character of Main Street, which I'm sure most of you are well aware of. The reuse of the building and its current footprint and the reuse of the majority of the hardscape on site as well allowed us to preserve most of the existing mature trees on site. As we've discussed, it is a priority of the applicant to maintain the character and also be very efficient in the construction practices. Any of the mature trees that do have to be removed to accommodate new circulation, as we've discussed, sidewalks will be placed fully around the building and an individual sidewalk up to each unit for full access. Any trees that come down for that accommodation will be replaced in kind by new shade and ornamental trees throughout the parking lot and the circumferential drive. Our plan also features 2 buffers. They are along the north and south property lines as required by the zoning regulations. They are 25 feet in width to be planted. The zoning regulations allow some flexibility, so part of our goal with meeting with the direct abutting property owners was to make sure that we took into account their concerns. So they are aware of our plans. We have incorporated comments that they have with the landscape planting selection. Specifically to the north, we have a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees and shrubs. As we've mentioned earlier, there is a fenced-in area. I believe it's still an electric fence they mentioned for horses. They want to and appreciate that new residents will be able to see the horses, but they do not want people entering the site for obvious safety concerns. So the plantings over there will be supplemented by a 5-foot-tall black vinyl coated chain link fence, as was requested. Along the southern property line, we have a similar mix of deciduous and evergreen shrubs and low trees. Another constraint on that side are some overhead power lines, so we wanted to make sure for, again, the safety of the residents and the abutting property owners that we don't have any trees or shrubs that will grow too tall, enter the power line area, and then cause safety hazards. There are also, if you are looking on your plans, the northwestern property lines along the main entrance drive. There is a residential property, again, one of the owners of the families that we have talked to. We are proposing a new arborvitae row. The current plans that you have show it on their property. That was part of the original discussion. The revised plans that we have preliminarily presented to the town have moved the proposed arborvitae row back onto the subject property, so full maintenance will occur by the new owner. This tactic and the goal of this new arborvitae row is to accommodate the fact that the existing hemlock hedge there, if anyone has driven by the site, there is a large hedge there existing, but it is starting to face a lot of damage and decay over time. We do understand that it will continue to decay, so the plan is to proactively remove it, replace it with a new arborvitae hedgerow that will be maintained over time to protect, again, the abutting property owner and the new residents on site. The only other area of intentional clearing of the existing tree line is behind the building, so to the east or the right-hand side on your plans. The goal of this area is about a ½ acre in size, will be open lawn, a flexible space that the residents can use along with their visitors or their families for passive and active recreation. The goal of placing this in the back, it is already a fairly flat area, so we're taking advantage of that, and we wanted to preserve, again, the character of Main Street along the front. We did not want to make any sudden changes or increase in activity in that front expansive lawn that sits there now. So all of that activity will occur in the back if over time the community decides that they want to change the way that they use the front of that space. Of course, they're welcome to, but we wanted to make sure that there is a secluded and private space that they can do so in the back of the building as well. In terms of site lighting, if anyone again has visited the site, there are some historic, very low light poles out there right now. They are not compliant with current regulations as much as we would love to keep them. We hope that our new lights propose, again, safety and security for the residents while maintaining that historic ambiance. So the new poles are selected. They will sit at 12 feet tall, no taller than that. They are LED fixtures and dark sky compliant. The light levels are comfortable for a residential setting, so there are not going to be too bright or hot spots, but they still maintain full compliance with the zoning regulations for required light levels. So on behalf of the applicant and the entire design team that you've heard, again, we want to reiterate that we believe the project provides a very suitable and essentially elderly housing use, not only for the Main Street community, but for the entire town of South Windsor. It is currently a vacant property and very underutilized, and the applicant hopes to change that. Our low intensity and adaptive reuse design approach is beneficial to both the neighbors and the town's interests by improving the site's overall appearance and meeting all applicable zoning regulations. At this time, we will conclude our presentation unless anyone else has anything additional to add. I believe we would like to respectfully request, time permitting, of course, that the application be placed on the agenda for action if there is time at the conclusion of the public hearing. I know originally there was time permitting issues with that, but if it was possible, we would like to request that addition to allow the applicant to continue moving forward with the enhancement of this site. And I thank you all for your time and attention.
Thank you. At this time, we'll turn to our town staff. Jeff Folger.
Okay, so this is application 21-31P, 1060 Main Street, elderly housing, public hearing, planning department report. This request from 1060 Main Street LLC and Housing Authority of the Town of South Windsor for a special exception to Table 3.1.1A, Section 7.7, and site plan of development for the redevelopment of the existing 31,495 square foot facility into 37 elderly apartment units to be known as 1060 Main Street Elderly Housing on property located at 1060 Main Street, A40 zone. This application is a joint application between 1060 Main Street LLC and the South Windsor Housing Authority as required, Section 7.7. The purpose of this regulation is to provide housing particularly suited to the needs of the elderly citizens. Housing must be located in reasonable proximity to such shopping and services as are required by elderly persons, and the development is to be designed to provide a pleasant environment for habitation. Also, the use must be in conformity with the general framework and intent of the Town Plan of Conservation and Development. Section 7.7, housing for the elderly. The regulation currently permits a total of 500 units of senior housing to be built. The town currently owns 70 units and 356 other elderly units have been built. Currently, there are 74 units left under this regulation. With the addition of these 37 units, there will be 36 units remaining to be approved. The zoning requirements include proposed building height is 19 feet, 30 feet is allowed. The site size is 13 plus acres. The minimum lot size required is 2 acres. The minimum required frontage is 200 feet. This site has 272 feet provided along Main Street. Impervious coverage proposed is 25.3%, and 40% is allowed. The unit breakdown includes 21 one-bedroom units ranging in size from 569 square feet to 799 square feet. 16 two-bedroom units ranging in size from 870 square feet to 1,201 square feet. Amenities will include a community room with a small kitchen to host small gatherings. There will also be a courtyard available for residents to access from their units. Special exception criteria include the proposal is consistent with the goals and objectives of the Plan of Conservation and Development. The application has met the requirements of the zoning regulations. The land is physically suited for the proposed use. Minimal, if any, adverse environmental impacts are created. No traffic or other hazards will be created. The impacts on the capacity of the present and proposed utilities, street, drainage systems, sidewalks, and other elements of the infrastructure will be minimal. There will be minimal or no adverse effects to existing uses in the area. Surrounding property values will be conserved. The character of the neighborhood will be maintained or minimally disrupted. General welfare of the community will be served. There is a balance between neighborhood acceptance and community needs. Historic factors are adequately protected, or due consideration to preservation of historic factors has been demonstrated. The overall physical appearance of the proposed development is compatible with the surrounding development and the Commission's goals for the neighborhood corridor. Architectural design is aesthetically pleasing and blends well into the area. The Commission may impose additional conditions in accordance with these regulations in order to ensure that all applicable criteria enumerated above and/or within a particular use category are satisfied. The current Town Plan of Conservation Development supports uses that will maintain the current character of Main Street. The residential section also encourages the development of additional affordable housing in the town. Minimum parking required is 1 space per unit plus one space per employee. The applicant is providing 78 spaces for 37 units, including 8 accessible spaces. To comply with the EV charging regulations, 3 spaces are proposed as EV installed ready level 2 spaces, and an additional 5 spaces will be EV ready for future use. Development will be serviced by a single access drive off of Main Street, with the sidewalk connection being added to the site. Pedestrian access via bituminous sidewalks has been provided throughout the site. All lighting on the site will be full cutoff fixtures with low lighting levels around the perimeter of the building and parking areas. A 25-foot buffer is required along the southern, northern, and eastern sides of the property. The buffer is shown as 25 feet on the plans from the single-family houses or properties to the west. The site contains a small area of regulated wetlands. The applicant received IWACC approval on 7/21/21 with recommendation of a bond in the amount of $5,000 to ensure compliance with erosion and sedimentation plans and $5,000 for the establishment of the stormwater structures. Public water and sewer are provided. The Water Pollution Control Authority approval is required as well. We have requested information from the Human Services Department about impact on services provided to senior citizens. Based on previous developments, Andrea Cofrancisco, Director of the Human Services, has indicated she does not feel that we have much of an increase in transportation needs or senior services needs, as it is a relatively small development. If this application is approved, the Planning Department has no requested modifications.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Daniel stated, all my comments were addressed. I just want to reiterate that the EV chargers that are installed and made ready need to be level 2 chargers. That's all.
Okay, thank you. At this time, do we have any letters to be read into the record? Okay, we'll let the secretary read the 2 letters.
June 30th, 2021, Planning and Zoning Commission, Town of South Windsor, 1540 Sullivan Ave, South Windsor, Connecticut, 06074. Letter of support for 1060 Main Street Elderly Housing PZZ meeting on 7/27/2021. Commissioners, please be advised that the Town of South Windsor Economic Development Commission at its regular meeting on June 23rd, 2021, voted unanimously to send a letter of support to the Planning and Zoning Commission in favor of the application for 1060 Main Street. Sincerely, Paul Burnham, Chairman, Economic Development Commission. And the second one is support 1060 Main Street, adaptive reuse elderly housing, oppose addition of sidewalk. July 27, 2021. Dear Chairman Pasiconis and Commissioners, as a property owner abutting the proposed 1060 Main Street adaptive reuse elderly housing, we support the proposed project. We oppose the addition of a sidewalk along Main Street. A sidewalk will detract from the beauty of the historic homes and properties. Sincerely, Erica Firm and Janet Pryor.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll ask if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak in favor of this application, please step forward. I'll remind the public there should be a sign-up sheet there, if you could just
There
print your
is.
name and address.
Sure. For the record, my name is Andre Dubril, and my wife and I, Lisa, have been residing at 1076 Main Street for the last 21 years, where actually she grew up in the house since 1970, so.
If you could speak into
She's
the
been there a
microphone.
long time.
Thank
So that's
you.
why I was surprised she didn't want to talk. So, having been here for 20 plus years, I've seen that nursing home. We lived through it. We had quite a few different interesting events between all the vehicles going in and out. The occasional visitor, because we literally are right in front. So we'd find some people sitting on our front porch, coming up our back lawn. So it's just interesting stuff, right? We are in full support of this. As we've been sitting here and we've been watching that property decay. I mean, literally waiting for somebody to mow the lawn, waiting for somebody just to keep the lights on, because as it gets dark, it's a haven. Let's just be clear, we've got young kids around, teenagers, and when you see a dark building and you can drive behind it, we've seen the vehicles, we've seen the bikes, we've seen everything, right? So, again, when I think about this and I think about what it's doing, first question I had when they approached was, so what are you changing? And the answer was nothing. The answer was, we love the footprint. We're gonna keep the footprint. It's gonna stay the same. Same driveway, nothing big. We'll put a sidewalk. And they were like, we want a sidewalk from the building to the front of Main Street. And I was like, a sidewalk to go where? Because we know we have no sidewalks on Main Street, right? So it just felt right. It just felt right. The lighting, the protection, the people. Then you ask, who's gonna be there? Because of course, now my mind's running. Is this gonna be subsidized, right? Is my house value gonna go down? Nope, it's not subsidized. People are gonna rent these homes, rent these apartments. I'm sure, they're not gonna be given away cheap, right? People are gonna pay to be on Main Street because it's a quiet street. It's a place just to relax. And when I saw these plans, not only did I think about the relaxation, I did say to myself, okay, so now they're gonna expand the driveway to go around it, but they have to, think about it. You're putting units around this thing. You don't want people parking in the front and then walking, in the back. So it made sense. Overall, it was a conversation that we were having, and I'm looking at this and I'm looking at these plans and I'm like, man, now we're gonna have to keep up with these guys, right? Because they're gonna be on their game. They're gonna be maintaining this thing to the nth degree. And I'm like, yeah, these hemlocks, they don't look too healthy. And we've been watching them for the past 20 plus years and probably longer than that for my wife and my in-laws. So, it was an idea that they threw out. We could take these down, we could replace them. You've got some beautiful arborvitaes in the front of your house. We could put arborvitaes up for here. We're like, okay. So, again, I think they're trying to do it right. They're trying to maintain Main Street, the privacy, the footprint. I don't know. That's where we stand. We're excited because everything else that we heard from the rumors, and a few folks within town giving us phone calls about what might be coming in, this is a pleasant surprise. This is a pleasant surprise. So it has our support. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward.
But I just wanted to say that I am in favor of this. My
Okay, if you
daughter is
could,
the,
please introduce yourself to the commission.
I'm sorry. It's Kathleen Young, Y-O-U-N-G.
Just tilt this up just a little bit more.
Kathleen Young. I'm at 1136 Main Street, but I've lived there 75 years. And my daughter owns the abutting property. I just wanted to point out where it is. The wetlands go into the area, so she owns the area. So she abuts the property back. So there's horses here, I have horses.
Giddy up.
When I first moved in, it was all tobacco land and it's flat, so there's tobacco sheds. So the abutting neighbor who wants the black fence put up, obviously, you know, we don't want to see anybody injured with the horses, because horses can be wild animals. But everybody wants to look at them because they are gorgeous. And what I'm trying to get at is we really appreciate the fact that it's going to be refurbished. I have watched it decay. I have watched vagrants come in, the doors open, call the police just to come guard the empty building, so I am absolutely pleased. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none. Is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Okay, please step forward to the microphone.
Because this Main Street has been a farming area, I do oppose sidewalks coming to the street. I know when the convalescent home was there, people would walk. Of course, down the driveway is wide enough where 3 vehicles can go. So they would come in the wheelchairs and go, and they'd come down the street. Now it's golf carts and it's all kinds of, I mean, the horses still go down the street and bicyclists, and it's a very active street, but people watch, even the cars. I had a running dog today. Literally, stop traffic, here comes the dog down the street. So you have to be careful, but people are knowledgeable as to, and they want to be free in an open area. And that's why I oppose sidewalks. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns they'd like to voice? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Cavanero.
Thank you. I have a few things. I'll start with the traffic report. I was looking for a trend from existing, what it was reported to what it was proposed. And I'm just interested to see in the morning for the peak hours to see a bit more trips, but from the afternoon for the trips to decrease. So I'm just curious why that is.
Hello, Commissioner. And to answer your question, so how we evaluate traffic is the International Traffic Institute. They put together a book of all the studies that they do for different properties. And based off, I mean, the building square footage stayed the same, but we did evaluate the number of beds that are proposed with this new renovation. And just so happens from going from a nursing home to this assisted facility, there happens to be a reduction in that peak flow hour. So it's just how we evaluate the traffic, using the number of units that are proposed, and looking at how the ITE sees traffic based off of their studies that they have. That's what the findings showed. So.
Okay, thank you. The next one I have, On the other document provided, I read that for the back of the building, just under 18,000 square feet of wooded area would be removed, as was noted, for an outdoor gathering space. I see there's some elevation change in that front lawn area. I assume that can't be used because it's, again, closer to the road, it's a bit farther away from the building. Is that the case, or was it just preferred to have that behind the building, closer to it?
Our decision to utilize the back space instead of the front lawn is really out of respect for the main streetscape, to stay away from putting activities where there have been none. And also, we think residents appreciate something that's not quite so public as out on Main Street. And this will be, it's not a large area, but it's pretty flat, and it would allow people to have a picnic or a gathering, or just in general have an opportunity to sit outside. We think we have a terrific mix here because we have the interior courtyard as well. Sean talked about that as a quiet place for people to have the opportunity to be outside, but we also want another gathering space. Our client has tremendous experience in apartment complexes, and it's important to provide the residents with some alternative outside spaces.
All right, thank you. And one last thing I have, a great segue into my next point. To accommodate that space, looking on the map, there's actually two things. So would it be possible to have a crosswalk from the back sidewalk to that open space area? It crosses through a 24-foot wide road. I don't see any crosswalk there, and I also see on that 4-foot width concrete sidewalk from Main Street to the front parking lot, I don't see a crosswalk either to where it hits the parking lot to the sidewalks that go around the building. Would that be possible to have a crosswalk for safety?
The answer is it's certainly possible to have a painted crosswalk. Typically on private drives where traffic is pretty well controlled in terms of speed and relatively minor traffic counts occur. In the real world, people cross where they cross. They're going to come out their door on that side, and they're going to walk across the street. They're not going to walk along the sidewalk to a pedestrian crossing because there's no traffic. If the commission wants a sidewalk, we could certainly locate one. It's not a problem. We have plenty of room, and we would place it in an area that would be most convenient for most people, if that's what the commission determined was appropriate.
Okay. Yeah, I just know for crosswalks in general, not only is it useful for the person crossing the street, but also useful for the driver. It's a clear indication that that is an area where people would be crossing the street. As well, it should be obvious that a driver should be mindful of people crossing. It's just another indication just to slow down and just look around. So those are all my concerns and questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner LeBlanc.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this was mentioned or not, but I'm looking at this is great, by the way. It's been an empty building and kind of an eyesore for quite some time, and it's kind of nice that something's going to be done with that building. Now, obviously, it's elderly housing, but speaking of that, these are people who are self-reliant, is not necessarily a nursing home or is not a care facility. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Okay.
These are individual apartments. Everybody has full living facilities, and they're private residences. Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I've seen an example of this done at Vero Beach where my father lives, and they did a real nice job with it. So I understand what you're doing here, and certainly I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Commissioner Wagner.
Yeah, I'm just delighted to see this application coming in. I did want to comment, and I think our engineer, Mr. Doolittle, talked about this, but just to make sure, on drawing number C-SP1, which is the site plan, there are 2 notes about electric vehicle charging. And one says 2 typical EV installed parking spaces and electric vehicle charging station sign. That should indicate level 2, and I think that's what you were saying. The next one says 4 EV ready spaces, provide conduit provisions for level 1. That should be level 2.
I think we've already provided Jeff with a revised plan based on his comment.
And then one other comment, one of those spaces should be van accessible, so it ought to look like an ADA space. However, when we drafted these regulations, we were concerned that we not restrict parking in the early days of adoption of electric vehicles, so that, if you add an ADA space and you also make it restricted, then you have to have more EV charging spaces that aren't restricted. So in the early stages, with the numbers you have here, the space would be van accessible but not restricted to handicap. As you get to more of these spaces being filled in, then that van accessible space would become restricted to handicap. But with the numbers you got here, you should start out with just, it ought to look and feel like a regular ADA space, a van accessible ADA space, but not have a sign that says it's restricted.
So I will speak to that quick. I do believe we have met that. The label for it is kind of hiding within the building footprint on that same sheet C-SP1. So if you see, again, it's the westernmost parking lot to the north. We have a proposed handicap accessible space, and the hatching is to the north.
I apologize. I see now there's a third note.
So to the north, just for everyone's education, to the north of that handicap hatching, we have another handicap compliant space that has not been marked accessible only. So in the future, the sign can be added if necessary.
So that definitely should be one of the installed spaces, however. In other words, we have to have an ADA accessible space among those, the first spaces that are installed.
Correct. So
I don't know, maybe, Jeff, you already took care of all that, but just wanted to reinforce that.
Thank you very much.
Now, I had a thought that where they're located now, there's this corridor that kind of goes out the northeast corner, and then to get over to those EV charging spaces, I'm not sure how far of a walk that is, but there's another corridor in the southeast. The first corridor is in the northwest corner, but the southeast corner, people coming out there or live in that area have a significantly longer walk to get to these EV-ready spaces. So I don't know what your electrical panel design is going to look like, but I think it would be good to have some of those EV-ready spaces down in the southwest or southeast corner.
Understood. We appreciate your input. Sorry, scared me for a second. I believe where we did place them was just in proximity of each other. As the regulations have been written, we're learning this process as well. We are willing to relocate them if necessary to provide more access to other units. I believe another reason we clustered them in the parking spaces to the far west on the site. We tried to provide at least one parking space for each unit along each side of the building, along each face. So we will try to find areas where there may be extra spaces. We did not want to limit access to the units either, so we can take a look and if possible, we can relocate some of them or redistribute.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I do understand that, the people who, their primary need is to have a place to park the car and get to their unit in the rain or whatever, so.
Commissioner Wagner, if I may interject for the record, Ben Wheeler, licensed landscape architect with Design Professionals. Are you indicating the 2 corridors in the bright pink color that's located on that plan? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, if you're looking at your A901 drawing, the pink corridors there.
I believe it's red on our plan.
Reddish, pinkish. Okay. So So those corridors that are on that plan, the only purpose for those corridors is access to and from the courtyard. Basically, they're not corridors serving any units at all. So
I
I
was
just wanted,
I was interpreting that the doors to the units open onto the courtyard. Is that not
do
true?
you mind if I approach?
Yeah.
What's your step, please?
So is this a door here?
Right here.
Yeah, but what on each unit?
Correct. Each unit
Has a door.
correct, but they also have doors on the exterior.
Oh, they do? Oh, yeah, now I can see that. Okay. All right, so the corridors are not relevant to this discussion then?
Right, so each unit has its own access point on the exterior of the building. Some of the units have doors to the courtyard, so therefore, that's the purpose of the corridors is if somebody were to be in the courtyard when an emergency happens, in their unit, it gives them another way to exit the courtyard.
Okay. Again, if you can find, and maybe I would just make these the EV-ready spaces on the southeast corner. That way, you won't be taking up spaces that people need with regular cars until we have more EV vehicles in the population. That's all I had. Thank you.
Commissioner Foley.
Well, I'm glad to see this project moving forward. They're repurposing this. It's a long time coming. One quick question, I think might be for Ben, or the air conditioning units, the condensers that are going to be, every unit gets its own AC handling system, correct?
Correct, they're shown on the plans, they'll be fenced on the sides and then landscaped to the front.
Okay, that's all I want. I just wanted to make sure that they were somewhat buffered. So,
Yeah.
all right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bonzani.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple quick questions. As far as the parking goes, are each unit gonna have their own spot, like a numbered spot? You know, I see there's tons of different, ways to get in and out of here. If somebody parks on this side or lives on this side and all the parking there is full, they're gonna have to park on, walk all the way around. Is each individual unit gonna have like their own spot, so this way that's easier for them?
Our clients have not addressed that with us. I know you have other applicants who've come forward where they like to have the float, because then all of a sudden you have a shortage in certain areas. So they haven't fully addressed that. I'm sure they're going to be characteristic of how they normally handle their developments.
Right. But I mean,
So they may assign them, but they're going to be, some people will have to do a little walking, as you can see, because we can't get a space close enough to every unit.
Right, but
It's
some of
within
these are,
15 feet or something.
from one side of the building to all the way to the other side of the building, it's pretty far, and it is elderly housing,
Oh, yeah,
so
that's correct.
I'm just thinking, that's
There may
all.
be
And-
selected areas we have to do that. Hopefully, they don't have to do the whole thing.
And Peter, I know we have regulations for how many handicap spots per 73 you have here.
And we
Are you
get
gonna add,
double
are you gonna
the-
add,
We get, and they're spread around.
that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Dexter.
This might be a question for Jeff Folger. So the project is considered an elderly housing project, and it's co-applicant with our housing authority. Does that make it exempt from affordable units? Can we request a percentage of affordable? I'm not sure how that works. I've never seen that combo. Do you know?
No, I'm not sure on that,
Applicant know?
what the requirements are for the housing authority.
Yeah, if I may, I believe the applicant's application is for elderly housing without any, per se, affordable units.
So they detailed that in their application.
That's correct.
And I know it's stated in the narrative that it's affordable. What makes it affordable is the smaller sizes. It's not 1,000 feet, it might be 571 feet or something like that. And I did have a phone call with Michelle Leip today and talked about this briefly.
She's on board with
Yeah.
how they're doing it.
Right. Our housing authority's support is just that, in that it's affordable for elderly, being a smaller unit, okay?
Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Bernstein.
So our plan of conservation and development strongly discourages vacant buildings, so I too am delighted to see this application, especially as someone that lives near Main Street. I want to get clarification on a few things, if I may. So in the narrative, it speaks about apartments, and when I think apartments, I think rentals. Is that what this is? These are not units for sale?
That's correct.
These are rentals.
That's correct.
And this is what we would call, so there's a lot of discussion about elderly. This is independent living. It's not
Independent.
assisted. It's not nursing.
Correct. It's, you must be 62 years of age or older under your community's definition of elderly. Every community has a little different take on that. Some are 55, some are 60. Yours is 62. So the residents will be 62 years and older. They're expected to live independently. Every unit is designed so that it's a fully equipped kitchen, bath, living and dining areas. Each unit has its own washer and dryer. It's committed to people who live independently. There's no assisted living element, no community housing element. It is true independent living for people over the age of 62 and over.
One man's opinion, I do not consider 62 to be elderly, but that's a discussion for a different day. Is there any restriction against having children?
Yes, yeah,
As long as they're 62 and older, it's fine.
Well, so I happen to be on the north side of 62, and I have 2 children who live with me, so I would not be
you are
allowed to
not
move.
going to qualify to live there.
So it's just,
Well, you would, but you're going to have to leave your children somewhere else.
it's just the elderly folks who can move in.
Yes.
All right, thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Powell.
I have nothing further at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, one of the other commissioners mentioned, where's the bocce court? Is there any amenities? I know it's affordable housing, but I'm just wondering
Right,
if,
we don't plan to install any active recreation amenities like
No
that.
cornhole?
There may be a couple of those in the community room, I don't know, but ordinarily what we expect for housing for people, not all elderly, just over 62, is that more passive recreation is what they like. There may be some picnic tables out there or opportunities for people to gather, but we're not planning on installing bocce courts or pickleball courts or anything like that.
okay. I'm looking at drawing A-901, and I'm seeing all the colored units, and I'm seeing a lot of them are adaptable. Are there any units that from day one are handicap units? If you could maybe explain your chart, because I don't see an explanation of your type A, B, C.
As I had mentioned, there are 4 units that will be type A from day one.
And type A is?
Adaptable. Will be adaptable for ADA.
Okay,
Has all the
that's not what I
clearances.
asked. Are there any that are handicap accessible? Okay, so what's the difference between A and B?
Because A can be adaptable and has the required square footages for the clearances to make it an ADA compliant space.
And
The
B?
the type B, they can have some adaptations, but they wouldn't have the full clearances for ADA.
So, am I hearing right that only 4 of these units will be
There are
fully
additional-
handicap accessible? Yes or no?
No, there are more.
Okay.
There are more type A units based on that.
How many, I thought, I just heard you say there's 4 type A. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Collapsing society.
As I'm taking down everything. So yes, we have we have the 4 units that have the clearances. If you look at the floor plans, hopefully they're big enough in there. You can see that they have the larger circular clearances that can be
Yep.
fully ADA compliant. Where the B types have, say within the kitchens and that, they can be compliant within kitchen spaces, but the bathrooms would not be big enough to be a full ADA compliant space. So type B are, they're adaptive but not fully compliant.
Right, so
It is consistent with the building code that's required
just
with the numbers.
so I understand,
Certainly.
what is the maximum number of type As?
4.
4. Okay, so if somebody moves in here and they need ADA compliant, fully compliant, and they're not one of those 4 units, unless one of those 4 units is open, they have to go someplace else.
Correct. Within building code, we're required to set a certain amount that can be fully ADA, and the rest, and ADA, adaptive, everybody that is required to, or in need of adaptive space is not within a wheelchair.
Right.
So to accommodate within an adaptive type B unit expands the number of people that can be accommodated.
Yep, and just so I understand, when you have adaptive, and maybe all these are consistent, are they all like stand-up showers, low-rise clearance, that type of stuff?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So it makes it easier for the elderly. Okay. I don't have anything else. I think it's a great reuse of existing property. So at this time, commissioners, is there anything else? Any other reasons we should keep this public hearing open? Town staff? Applicant, you're all set?
Yes, we've completed our presentation.
Okay. So, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move we close the public hearing.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those, any discussion? No. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're gonna move into our regular meeting, and we're already past our time. I'm hoping the commission would maybe give us a half an hour more to try and get through some of the stuff that we've got on the table. If anybody does have to leave as far as commissioners, we just have to note that, what time they left in the minutes. Okay,
I move we extend the meeting till 10:10.
till 10? 10:10, okay. We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Okay. We've got public participation. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on anything that is not on our agenda tonight? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move into our new business. We have application 21-21P, Town of South Windsor, Pleasant Valley Elementary School. Jeff, is there any additional report or?
No, as you folks can see, there was a discussion between the two attorneys this afternoon and Michelle concerning the approval conditions on there. So you do have the most updated version of the approval conditions in front of you.
Yeah, I gotta get through some of this here. Yeah.
And obviously, the one that had the most discussion was item number 26.
Yeah. Mr. Foley should look at that pretty clearly. It's number 26. That had to do with the fields. Okay, let me just make sure I got everything else here. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff Doolittle, is there anything additional? You're all set.
Nope, we're all set. We'd be glad to answer any other questions you have.
Okay. All right. So commissioners, we could do a motion and then some discussion, or if anybody had a couple questions first. However, okay. Go ahead, Frank.
All right, I make a motion that we approve application 21-21P, Town of South Windsor, Pleasant Valley Elementary School, with the following,
Standard conditions?
standards conditions.
1 through what, 9?
10.
1 through 10, right? The
Okay.
standard conditions 1 through 10. So starting with number 11. In accordance with section 6.4.9, the commission has granted a modification to the required 409 parking spaces based on the uses presented. The approved reduction allows 181 spaces to be built within the parking areas, 71 temporary spaces available on the southern end of the bus loop, and 56 spaces available curbside within the site, totaling 308 spaces. The modification to the required number of parking spaces is based on the operational parking needs of the facility presented and the availability of temporary parking for special events. 12, access into the temporary parking area southwesterly of the bus turnaround area shall be clearly identified on the plans. This parking area shall be constructed with reinforced turf to be able to withstand the temporary parking. 13, in the event that church parking lot to the east is utilized for special events, a sidewalk connection shall be added to the plans. 14, trees to be preserved around the site shall be protected in the field prior to construction activities. 15, perimeter site lighting shall be controlled by light sensors and will be turned off by time clocked at 11:30 p.m. The same lights will turn on at 4 a.m. and remain on until turned off by photocell. 16, the 4 EV Level 2 parking spaces and the 6 EV capable parking spaces to be wired shall clearly be identified on the plans. 17, in order to provide safe crossing to the vicinity of the school, the Board of Ed will work with the local traffic authority, town engineer, state of Connecticut, and school transportation planners to evaluate and recommend the safest locations for crosswalks across both Ellington Road and Long Hill Road. The commission requests that a rapid beacon flashing system be considered for the school entrance and park view. 18, the Board of Ed shall ask the South Windsor Traffic Authority to review and evaluate the length of the school zone along Long Hill Road, particularly its southern limit, and post a speed limit accordingly. 19, irrigation shall be installed in the interior courtyard. 20, the guardrail at the entrance drive shall meet the standards of the Condat Merritt Parkway type guardrail. 21, the lower recreational area shall be graded at a pitch at no greater than 1.5% to facilitate proper drainage. 22, the commission requires that 2 sidewalk linkages, concrete sidewalk along the east-west connector driveway and the asphalt walk from the southern existing path to the school be included as bid alternates. 23, a deed combining all the properties into one lot shall be submitted. The property address shall be 591 Ellington Road. 24, land survey seal is required to certify the site plan. All proposed and existing iron ponds shall be identified on the site plan and easement chart provided. 25, engineering comments dated 7/13/21 must be addressed to the satisfaction of the town engineer. And 26, after establishing a guaranteed maximum price, the Board of Education will continue discussions with the town of South Windsor and consider adding new recreational fields in the southern portion of the school site as shown on the concept plan if such addition is within the school construction budget and receives all local and state approvals.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. On condition 16, I would like to add that one of the 4 EV level 2 parking spaces will be van accessible. And I just want to make sure, I think you misread one word on number 22. It's the draft said that the commission recommends that the 2 sidewalk. And
Yeah.
I heard you say requires.
Yeah, that was a draft, and it does say require. That's what, when we were discussing at the public hearing, that's what they said they were gonna put in as bid alternates, that they would be included, not part of the GMP.
So the word required is intended.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other discussion? Okay, put your microphone on, let everybody know.
I have no problem making that motion that Steve would like to add 16 to add a van accessible EV capable space.
Okay, and our second?
I would second that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll call the motion. All those in favor of the motion as stated and added to, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Let me just take a minute and gather all this stuff up here. Okay, our next is the Davis re-subdivision. I'll just ask town staff if there's anything else, anything new, or,
Nothing new. Do you all have the approval modifications subdivision?
let me see.
Not, I'd be happy to read it.
That should be in here. Yeah. Yep. And let me just see it for a minute. Yeah, it should be right in here. New business number 2. I'll say 2, thank you. So Commissioners, what is your pleasure?
I'd like to make a motion to approve application 21-29P Davis re-subdivision and interior lot. Condition 1, this approval is for 2 new lots totaling 3, numbered 1 to 3. These are all standard conditions? They look kind of specific here. Okay, so standard conditions 2 through 13. However, some of them have money in them, so let's see.
Number 12 has.
Number 12, a drainage assessment fee in the amount of $100 shall be submitted to this commission. Number 14, town engineers review comments dated July 1st, 2021 shall be incorporated in the final plans. 15, the new street addresses shall be for Lot 1, number 581, for Lot 2, number 597, and for Lot 3, number 603, and should be shown on the final plans. 16, the front yard setback for lot number 3 shall be established at a minimum of 30 feet behind lots number 1 and number 2, and 20 feet behind properties at 609 and 617 Pleasant Valley Road. Number 17, the approval locations of the house, garage, and driveway are an integral part of this special exception and require the installation of proposed lane order. Proposed lane order to preserve existing trees. If modifications are proposed subsequent to this approval, the structures will not be allowed to encroach any closer to the north property boundary without commission approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Jeff, number 17, can you define that word or maybe correct it? In the
Proposed lane?
Yeah. To preserve existing trees.
Plan?
Let me just look at her report. Existing trees to remain, an additional landscaping screen between the new lot.
Installation of the proposed. That's not jargon, is it?
I hate to delay this, just. Of proposed. To preserve. Installation of proposed. Required of. In order to preserve.
Installation of proposed. Here? No, that exists.
Required a.
Installation of proposed. Oh, okay.
Installation of proposed. garage and driveway are special exception, that's for this lot, right? Fire installation of proposed.
Good line of trees here.
Landscaping?
Landscape order, but
In order to preserve existing trees.
Okay, and require the installation of the proposed line in order to preserve existing trees. So I believe that has to do with the setbacks, no? Or? Screening proposed for line, proposed calls for 20 arborvitaes planted 5'6" in height, and would recommend the landscape plan be incorporated into an approval condition.
We told them we're going to preserve right along the property line here and here. This is a real indentation, was here to get the house in.
Right.
Otherwise, we're preserving, but there's some junky stuff in here. There was some better quality stuff along here and here. We agreed to preserve that. We didn't specify the depth of it. But we told them we're going to cut this back because it's junk.
Yeah, because it,
You know, we will clarify that.
Wasn't it something to do with the design of the home or the size of the home that you had to shift? It's gotta be lined in.
That's the setback.
yeah,
The setbacks in the one. We will clarify that when we draft up the final version.
okay,
There's clearly something missing. We will fill it in.
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't think it
Okay.
substantially changes your motion or your action.
right, I don't think so either. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we have one, item number 3, Connecticut General Statute Referral 8-24 for the 2-year lease of the 1 acre space on property at 157 Burgess Road.
full sidewalks the length of West.
That's. Do we have, who's presenting this?
I'm going to present this.
Is this you?
Yes.
Okay,
So this is a proposal, for the record, this is Jeff Doolittle, town engineer. Proposal to lease out about 1 acre of land within the town garage property at 157 Burgess Road for the primary purpose of screening of leaf mulch. The town has created a program to create a lot of high-quality leaf mulch. And we think it's to our advantage and to the buyer's advantage to be able to screen that on site. So what's being proposed is to lease out land along both the north and south side of Burgess Road, not immediately adjacent to the Leafs compost site, but close to it, kind of where Asplin has parked their trucks in the past, if you've driven down there. That's one of the areas, and they're not parking there anymore. So that area would be used to screen compost, basically, and that would be hauled off-site. And the town would obviously be compensated for that.
okay. Okay, commissioners, what is your pleasure?
I move that we forward a favorable recommendation for the 2-year lease on 1 acre property located at 157 Burgess Road for CGS referral 824.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
I second.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion? I don't have a problem with it. I'm good with it. Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We've got application 4, which is Hartford Truck, which is still open. And then we have bonds. Does everybody have their bond, previous bond?
What about number 5?
Is 1060 on our agenda?
Yeah.
Didn't I just say it's still, oh, I'm sorry.
That's, Hartford Truck is still open. 1060 is the.
1060 is not on our agenda.
It's on my agenda.
Well, it's not on mine. I run the meeting. Excuse me.
I received mine today, so.
Excuse me. I had to talk with Michelle Light today, and she said under no circumstances was it interpreted that we'd be acting on 1060, I'm sorry, Hartford Truck tonight at this meeting. We've got about 8 minutes left, and we still have other business we have to take care of. What are you confused about?
Because the public hearing for Hartford Truck's still open, so we wouldn't be acting on it tonight anyway. We're looking at 1060 Main, which you don't have on your agenda, Bart, but I do.
So do I.
It's
That's
on the
weird.
public agenda.
Okay,
I know. You want mine?
it's still, as I said, I asked Michelle about that today, because on a previous agenda, I did have it on it.
Okay.
But she said that it wasn't, there was no intent to act on it tonight.
For 1060.
We're talking about Hartford, I'm sorry, Main Street right now. Because it was a mistake. If you go back and you look on the agendas in the back of the room, it's not on it, okay?
Can we look at the website and see what's on there?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
Keep going.
Bonds. Does everybody have the bonds date from July 13th, 2021? It was in a previous package.
I left it home.
Do you want to run with this, Kevin?
What's that? All right. Give me a moment. Let's see. Application, let's see, bond reduction or release, application 08-49P, Burnham Brook Stables. The amount of 500, reduction of 500 for the balance of 0.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of reducing the bond to 0, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Application 20-05P, Real Estate Advisors, the amount of $2,000, reduction of $2,000 for a balance of 0.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Bonzani with his microphone off seconded it. Any discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. No discussion. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes unanimously.
All right, application 19-48P, the learning experience, the amount of 5,000, a reduction of 5,000 for a balance of 0.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion passes.
Application 16-15P, distinctive tree, Patria Road, erosion and sedimentation in the amount of 2,000, with a reduction of 2,000, the balance being 0.
Okay, you can probably do them both
Oh,
at the same
and
time.
application, and their stormwater, for the amount of 5,000, with a reduction of 5,000 for the balance of 0.
Okay, we have a motion, and I'll second it. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. We have minutes. We had minutes from 5:25 was the first set. And one of the notes I just want to mention is we need to note the time the commissioners left the meeting. So after the Pledge of Allegiance, like 7 rows down, we have alternate Commissioner LeBlanc to be seated for the vacant seat. And I just want to make note that, Mike, you turned off, I believe you told me at 10 p.m. So just for the record, were there any other commissioners that cut out early on that one?
No, we stayed to the bitter end.
No? Okay.
Literally.
I believe Caitlin has the other corrections, and was that the one you sent out? Yep. Was it just to me? Okay. So, do you have note of the changes? Just on page, and it might have printed out differently on my computer for something, but I'm looking at page like 3, there was a correction, or there should have been a correction. Paragraph starts, Chairman Pasconis pointed to the photos he took of Sullivan Avenue, illustrating, and then later in the paragraph, it talks about work by utilizing retaining walk and winding path from the sidewalk on Buckland Road, not to lot. Do you have that, Caitlin? Okay. Number 3, on page, I think, 4, the second paragraph, I believe, starts with Commissioner Pasconis thank Commissioner Wagner, but does not, and here's where it changes, think this covers the concern of a sidewalk on Sullivan Avenue. It had said something like, thinks this does not cover. And do you have the other comments that were corrected, Caitlin, or no? Okay, why don't we provide that to the commissioners, and we can go on to the next one. Did everybody review the June 8th minutes? We had the June 8th minutes and the June 22nd minutes. I'm just looking to see if I have any marks on that. Okay, the June 8th and June 22nd, I believe we can just adopt those by consensus. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, and then we have the July 13th minutes, which were just provided. I went over those. I didn't see any issues. So if nobody has any issues, we'll adopt those by consensus also.
Agreed.
Okay. Any old business, or you all set for tonight, Jeff?
No old business. I didn't know if you wanted to attempt to add 1060 Main on this, tonight's agenda, but it's up to you folks.
No, it's time to go home. Okay, motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
We have a second? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes.